All right, hope everyone's doing well. I want to talk today a little bit about Romans chapter 11, and specifically down here where it says that all of Israel will be saved. And that's in Romans chapter 11, verse 26. Here are a lot of different things going on with the all of Israel. Is this talking about physical, ethnic Israel? Is this talking about spiritual Israel? I know a lot of people go back and forth on it. I want to give my thoughts as to why I think that he's specifically in Romans 11 talking about physical ethnic Israel being put back together in the first century. So all throughout this, he's contrasting Jew and Gentile, and he tells them that the Gentiles have come in to provoke the Jews to jealousy. And I think he gives a fair warning to the Gentiles not to be proud or arrogant. If the natural branches were cut off, then you too could also be. But I think the passage that really helps us understand this is Hosea. And the prophet Hosea in chapter 1 is where I want to take a look at and kind of help us to get an idea about what's going on in the New Testament with this thought of all of Israel being saved. And specifically, like I said, in Romans 11, I think this thought of all Israel being saved is talking about physical ethnic Israel. Whenever Solomon was the king, the empire was split. So you had 10 tribes go north, 2 tribes, Benjamin, Judah, go south. The 10 northern tribes were called Israel. The 2 southern tribes were called Judah. And that's important to remember, especially in the prophets and during the time when they were split, because they get referenced in that exact same way. God tells Hosea, he says, I want you to go and take a wife of harlotry so you can see exactly what's been going on to me, on what's been happening to me. I'll read Hosea chapter 1, verse 2. The Lord began to speak by Hosea, and the Lord said to Hosea, Go take yourself a wife of harlotry and children of harlotry, for the land has committed great harlotry by departing from the Lord. So he went and took Gomer, the daughter of Diblaim, and she conceived and bore him a son. Then the Lord said to him, Call his name Jezreel, for in a little while I will avenge the bloodshed of Jezreel on the house of Jehu, and bring an end to the kingdom of the house of Israel. So God says that he's going to bring an end to these 10 northern tribes. And if you've read the Old Testament, and you can read Isaiah chapter 10 that goes along with this, then you'll see specifically that God is going to save a remnant out of Israel, the 10 northern tribes, but he sends the Assyrians to bring about the judgment that comes upon them. So God is making this promise, and he continues, let me just keep reading here in Hosea 1:6. She conceived again and bore a daughter. Then God said to him, Call her name Lo Ruhamah, meaning no mercy. For I will no longer have mercy on the house of Israel. 10 northern tribes, no mercy. But I will utterly take them away. Yet I will have mercy on the house of Judah, on the 2 southern tribes. And I believe the reason for this is that because the Messiah has not come yet, and he will come from the tribe of Judah. So he's not going to take away Judah. But I want you to see the prophecy over in verse 10 as to what's going to happen in the future days, specifically the latter days. It says this, Yet the number of the children of Israel shall be as the sand of the sea, which cannot be measured or numbered, and it shall come to pass in the place where it was said to them, You are not my people, that's what he just said, there it shall be said to them, You are the sons of the living God. So even though he cast them off, he saved a remnant, and eventually in the latter days, he's going to say to them again, You are my people, you are sons of the living God. Verse 11, Then the children of Judah and the children of Israel shall be gathered together. So you've got the 10 tribes and the 2 tribes that were separated. They're going to come back together. Well, how are they going to come back together? Well, it tells us in this prophecy. And appoint for themselves one head, and they shall come up out of the land, for great will be the day of Jezreel. Well, who's the one head? Well, the one head is none other than Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ is the one who comes, he preaches the kingdom, and all of the tribes are now being put back together under one head, who is Jesus Christ. Thus, let me say it a different way, all of Israel will be saved. Now, if we think about the New Testament, and you take the book of 1 Peter and who Peter is writing to, he is addressing these 10 tribes who were cast off, the remnant, they were spread out all over. So Peter is addressing them, and evidently he knew where they were because he's writing a letter to send to them to be able to put them back together. If you read the book of James, James 1:1 says, to the 12 tribes dispersed or scattered abroad. He is writing this. James is someone who is an apostle that's going to the Jews. He is writing this book to those who are scattered abroad in order to bring the 12 tribes, all of Israel, back together. If you remember, Paul says in Romans 1:16, he says, I'm not ashamed of the gospel of Christ, for it's the power of God to salvation to everyone who believes, to the Jew first, and then the Greek. So whenever you read the book of Acts and Paul is going around to a place such as Ephesus or to Corinth or any of those towns, he always goes to the synagogue first. Well, why is he going to the synagogue first? Because there is a dispersion of Jews that have been scattered all over, and he's regathering them back together through the preaching of the gospel. Then he takes the gospel to the Gentiles. Now, later in Hosea, and this is part of the mystery in the New Testament, later in Hosea, in chapter 2, and in verse 23, we read this. Then I will sow her for myself in the earth, and I will have mercy on her who had not obtained mercy. Then I will say to those who were not my people, you are my people. Paul quotes this in Romans chapter 9, speaking of the Gentiles. So what's happening under the preaching of the gospel in the New Testament? No longer does a Gentile have to become a Jew, and no longer are the 12 tribes separated from one another, and no longer are the 10 tribes who were cast off not God's people. What God is doing, he is bringing back together the 12 tribes, and he is bringing in the Gentiles all together to form one man in Jesus Christ under this one head, and they can all be called children of God based upon the work of Jesus. And I believe that's what all of Israel being saved is in reference to. If you'll read in Romans 11, 26 and 27, it gives you a reference to Isaiah 59. I don't want to go into it in this video, but it gives you the same mindset about exactly what we just talked about. So I hope that's helpful for you. I do think that that's talking about physical Israel, and you guys can comment down below, tell me where I missed it, or help me out if you think I'm wrong. But don't forget to like and subscribe down below. I hope that's helpful to you, and I hope that lays the picture out for you pretty clear. God bless. Take care.